Welcome to the Bethel Assembly Sermon Podcast. We're so glad you're taking a minute to listen, and we pray this message from our pastors will be a blessing on your life this week.
We're going to Matthew chapter 6. I can't commend enough what Jamie just said, because this is exactly what the Lord wants to say to us today. And I'm battling whether or not to keep singing and let us respond that way, or to hear from the word of the Lord today. But it's a word that we don't like to hear in our culture, but maybe even more specifically in our area, we don't like to hear this word. I remember growing up and knowing the extreme value of working hard, being a hard worker, but at the same time, I felt like from the church, I received the message that we should never want to be rich. So we're supposed to work really hard, work until our knuckles are bleeding, work with everything that we got, but we're never supposed to make it. And anytime you begin to get financially well off or on your own feet, you're supposed to feel shame about that, because the Bible hates rich people. And I don't know about you guys, but I don't know what a rich man is to other people, but I am abundantly blessed, and I'm very thankful for all that I have. But God is not bothered by people who succeed. He's not a God that hates rich people or even dislikes them. In fact, if you ever see any part of Jesus' heart, it's that he loves them so much that he can't stand their riches have them. But he has no disdain for rich people. He has disdain for people who mistreat other humans. But his issue has never been with that. But I don't know about you guys. Maybe y'all didn't struggle with the same thing. But I grew up with a hard-working daddy and mama. They worked and worked and worked and worked. They worked hard. And then they actually saw some fruit of those labors and began to make a life of themselves. And there's this feeling that first of all, don't let anybody ever know. You got to hide it. If you make anything, if you get anything, hide it. And the second thing you do is you don't live that lavish of a lifestyle because my God, what if somebody were to find out that God had blessed you? So material gain became like a negative thing. If you're making it in here, if God's blessed your business, we should be all the more out loud thankful for the blessings of God and not ashamed thereof. But there has been a tinge of that really only God likes poor people. That's why we like to keep the preachers poor. Now, I don't feel that way personally whatsoever, okay? But that was a thing. I don't know, some of y'all may remember that back in the day. People would bring food to the pastor's house, and they'd say things like, I was going to bring you some chickens, but they got better. There is no virtue whatsoever in being poor. There is virtue in being desperate for God. But we get nothing in our spiritual tank from being hungry and poor. Therefore, we should not be ungrateful when he gives us massive blessings. We should pray for financial blessing in our life. Now, that may not feel like a connection to what Jamie said, and I'm going to make the connection in a second. But I feel like many of us in this room perhaps is spending a lot of time listening to a voice that's telling us you're not going to make it, you're not good enough, it's all going to fail, it's all going to fall apart. God will not take care of you. It's really what the voice says. We may not say it that blatant, because if it said that blatant, maybe we wouldn't listen as much, but that's technically listen, anxiety, the root of anxiety is disbelief. If you're walking around with an anxious heart because at some level you do not believe that God is powerful enough to fix it, is good enough to do it. The root of anxiety is unbelief. Jesus is talking in the Sermon on the Mount. You're blessed. You're valuable. Then he says, this is what righteousness really looks like. It's the righteousness of the heart, not of listening to the list. And then he uses two major illustrations. Don't use your religious reputation, which is what we talked about last week. Don't pray out loud in front of other people in order that they may think you're religious. Don't give in front of other people so they think you're religious. Don't fast in front of other people. Like, it's okay for people to know you're doing that, but do it for God and God alone, and trust that he's the one who will reward you. All three times Jesus says he will reward you. He is a blessing God. He wants to reward you. He wants you to have material blessing. He wants you to have spiritual blessing. He wants you to have relational blessing. He wants you to have health blessing, medical blessing. I don't know. He wants you to be blessed is the point. He wants to bless you. He wants to help you. He wants to make you better. But you've got to trust him to do that and not other people's opinions of you to be what makes you feel blessed. Are you only blessed in the sense that people like you, or do you understand that your blessings come from God alone? The second illustration he gives us is what we're talking about today. There's a lot of people who think that if they make enough money, eventually that they'll be settled. Young person in the room, I know you've got a number in your head, but I promise you, when you make that number, and you will, that won't be the number anymore. If you don't believe me, go ask some of the white hair in here. I guarantee you they have more money in their bank that if you were to go talk to the 30-year-old self, they would have never believed that much money would be in their bank. And you ask them, are you completely settled? Are you not worried at all? And they'll tell you they're still worried. There's something about financial wealth that makes us think that it would cover us, and it doesn't. Let me tell you, you can't buy enough insurance to cover you. I thought insurance was supposed to help. It just increases in price. Why don't I just buy the goods instead of buying the insurance? Thank you, one of you. I keep buying insurance to insure a life that ain't worth having. We are blessed. We are valuable. There's a righteousness in our hearts. We don't need to be trusting our reputation. Last week we talked about the discipline of secrecy. But today I want to talk about the discipline of trusting. The discipline of trusting God with all that you have. To get rid of human opinion, that was last week. But this week I want to get rid of poverty mentality. Hypocrisy is what Jesus warned against the Pharisees. He said, don't be like the Pharisees who only do things for other people. They wear their mask and they act well, but they don't live well. He's trying to show us how to live the real blessed life. So one of the ways is that we don't trust wealth. By the way, let me give you a few points on finances. If you want to take a really good financial class, here it is. Here's some good points. This will change your life if you don't know how to handle your finances. Number one, God owns it all. He doesn't own 10%. You should give 10% as a representation, but all 100% is his. God owns it all. Here's another one. God knows it all. Some of you are on the edge of your seat right now wondering about what the next economy fall. Let me just tell you something. If you'll invest in the kingdom of heaven, they don't trade on the stock market. They're not waiting for a foreign currency to go up or down, Randy. If you know Randy, there's a good joke there. Never mind. God's stock market is never fluctuating. He has not sold some of the cattle on 1,000 hills. He still has them. I wish he would. It would be helpful. But he's going to own a cattle on 1,000 hills no matter what. His streets are still paved with gold, and that means they mean nothing up there. They got tread marks in heaven. Good years are on the gold up there. God owns it all. God knows it all. God has plans. So if you want to be blessed in your life, don't ask what economic trends are coming to pass or what the Democrat or the Republican guy might do. Ask instead to be a part of God's plan and then align yourself with what God is doing. It's good financial advice. I don't know if you're picking it up now. Let me get a little more basic with you. Here we go. Wealth is temporary. Those beautiful dollars you have in your pocket, they don't mean as much as they used to. Do you know that? Let's take a couple hours here and talk about what things used to cost. I love hearing y'all talk about a drink used to be a nickel. You can't get a drink for less than $2. We're not at Disney World in here. the dollar doesn't mean nearly what it used to, and the more dollars you get, at one point you would have thought you were super rich, but those dollars don't mean nothing now, right? So why trust the dollar? Even the dollar says to trust in God. The dollar's so insecure, it doesn't even say trust in me. It says, hey, in God we trust, okay? Because don't look here. Wealth is temporary. The dollar, the economy, supply and demand, all of that is very temporary. Now, again, I want you to be blessed. But what I'm saying is if you trust the dollar, you're going to be disappointed. You can't put enough trust on the economy. You can't do that because the economy will not last. Here's some biblical financial help, okay? Maybe you're wanting that, very practical. The first thing you need to know, if you want to be good at finances, the biggest thing you need, write this down. Go ahead, right? This is going to bless you. I'm going to Joel Osteen it here. This is how you start your best life now. If you really, did he already put it up there? Oh yeah, good. God owns it all. That's number one. Okay, good. Here's some big advice right here. You ready? If you want to be rich, if you would like, how many in the room would like to be financially blessed? Go ahead and raise your hand. Come on. Go ahead and confess. Go ahead and confess. All right, some of y'all lying. That's all right. But I can tell you the most powerful way to raise money is to work. In fact, over the history of the world, it's been the most impactful way to get money. There has never been a get-rich scheme that has ever been as good as just going to work. Finding something to do and then doing it. Go to work. Work hard. The harder you work, it's crazy. The harder you work, unless you're in one of those big corporations who don't bless you, but really, in reality, the more you work, usually the more dollars come your way. But that ain't the way it is much. I understand. Okay, wham. All right. But the way it usually works is that the harder you work, the more money comes your way. Okay, now here's another mind-blowing thing. Now, you'd expect this from the church. So let me go ahead and get this one out of the way. The more you make, the more you should give. In America, the richer you get, the less generous you are. Which should blow our minds. We're the richest people who have ever lived. America is the richest nation that has ever existed, and we are becoming less and less generous. The more money you make, the less generous you are. It should not shock us that the woman with 2 mites gave everything she had, because when you ain't got much, you're a lot more giving with it. The next thing is you should save. Now, this is something that Pentecostals have never really talked about. All right? Now, those of you who are smart in here, you know how to save, but you just never listen to a preacher. Because preachers up here like to tell you that Jesus is coming back tonight, and so put all of your money in the offering plate. But if Jesus come back tonight, who's going to hold the money here? The bookkeeper? I hope it ain't the preacher. What's he want you to leave your money for if he's coming back tonight? Oh, I remember hearing so many sermons about don't worry about how much money you got. Don't worry about making $1. Don't chase that, chase God. And I understand now what they meant spiritually, but I used to think that dollars were dirty. And I know they're dirty, you need to wash your hands and all. But I used to think that having money was a sin of some sort, and it's not. God wants you to be financially blessed. What he doesn't want is for you to chase the dollar and not chase him. He's who is worthy to be chased. And when we chase him, as it says at the end of this, he says, seek first the kingdom of God, and all the rest will be added to you. But many of us would like to add all the rest and then see if we can fit God in. And see, God don't like to play that. He doesn't like to be in the budget. He wants to be the budget. Let's go to number 5. Number 5 is then learn how to live on the rest of it, I think. Just be wise with what you have. One of the best ways to do these things is to budget. Is that what the 5th one is? Live on the rest? Yeah. Hey, I wanted to share this last week, but Dave Ramsey says, we buy things we don't need with money we don't have to impress people we don't like. Most of the time, you don't see your own car coming down the road. So why do you want such a pretty car? You basically are in the inside of it most of the time. Hey, I guess what? Many of the vehicles that we drive, we've got to work double time in order to pay for the cotton picking thing, so we'll never get to enjoy it. We'd be better off living in it. Wealth growing strategies. How about you budget? Tell your money where to go. Make a plan, and then live like no one else so that one day you can live like no one else. Now, if those sound enticing to you, I want you to know, in December, Amy Johnson will be starting a financial peace class. There's a slide for that as well. There's a financial peace class coming up in December. Please see Amy and Jamie Johnson today and get into that class because it'll be fantastic for you. What a blessing. It changed our financial direction. That's why I do it. I try to get us to do it every single year. Amanda and I took it early on in our marriage, and it has been a huge blessing. Not just in the financial area, but just the communication part. Learning to talk about everything. I didn't know you had to do that. I thought you just yelled about it when you got really mad. I didn't know you just would communicate. And so the financial piece was very, very helpful in learning how to do that. Hey, if you're a young person, if you're under marriage age, that's young, get this right before you get married. There's nothing that will stress your marriage more than money. Nothing. So how about you get it right? Go see Amy and Jamie. If you don't know who Jamie is, Jamie came last night as an 8-year-old. He's precious. All right, let's get to the scripture. Matthew chapter 6, verse 19. Now listen. Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. Now listen. If you think that bank account is worth your trust, just know that there are people out there with GEDs that can get into your account and steal everything you own. Now, why they won't go get a half-decent job, I don't know. But as long as they're stealing your mess, I guess they've got no reason to go get a real job. If you're going to trust the digits on that internet page as what you can trust, then just be careful, I guess. Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. I hate that when I buy something new, it immediately is not new the moment I use it. I hate that. I hate that I have to buy my kids another video game. The one I bought was expensive. How could you beat the game so fast? Why are we buying another video game? None of y'all buy. Are y'all nodding? Are you asleep already? Come on. Everything just runs out. Verse 20. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven where moth nor rust destroys and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Verse 22. The eye is the lamp of the body, so if your eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light in you is darkness, how great is the darkness? What does that mean? If your vision is off, if your perspective is off, your body's going to hurt. If you ever wake up one morning and man, I cannot see for anything. I just hope I get to work. What are the chances your whole body's going to be in good shape? They will probably have to bring your body to work. Because without good vision, everything is messed up. With a bad eye, but you know what's even worse than that? What he's really talking about here is not being blind, it's actually being double visioned. Because what we often do is we say, yes, Lord, of course I trust you, but I also want to make sure I keep an eye on my money. Of course I'm with you 100%. But when you're double visioned, when you're divided in your vision, when there's division in the place of your heart, when there's divided vision there, then you're cross-eyed and you can't see much of anything. You might as well be blind. How about somebody who's driving their car and looking at the rearview mirror the whole time? You going a lot faster the other way. But people who like to look at that rearview mirror the whole time, there's a good chance you're going to hit something up that way. How many of you have found out that you can't really take your eyes off the road for more than 4 seconds without your car trying to kill you? Maybe y'all are getting really good at the whole knee thing, but if somebody dings on my phone and I look down for a second, it's like, I can't even look away. I got to keep my eyes on it. How quickly and how fast is your life? How quick can you get in the ditch? Anybody in this room ever said to yourself, you know what, I'm going to go start looking at vehicles, and then you found out 48 hours later there's a new vehicle in your yard? That's not good vision. When we're not looking right, when we don't have the right perspective of life, it's dangerous. That's what Jesus is saying here. Here's number 24. No one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and the devil. You cannot serve God and food. What does he say there? Now, why is Jesus meddling in money? Why would he say money there? Why didn't he say the real bad guy? Why didn't he say demons? Why didn't he say the Pharisees? That would have been easier. Money, that's not, no one here struggles with worrying about money. That's why none of us care about this election, right? Are you better off this 4 years ago or whatever? Yeah. Therefore, I tell you, do not be anxious about your life, what you will eat or what you will drink, nor about your body, what you will put on. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothing? Look at the birds of the air. They neither sow nor reap nor gather into barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not more valuable than they? If you're going to underline something, I want you to underline that. Are you not more valuable than they? And which of you, by being anxious, can add a single hour? Okay, that's what my version says. But the literal word is can add a single cubit to your life by worrying. A cubit is a length of measurement. So it'd be the same thing as him saying, who by worrying could add a foot to themselves? I'm just curious. Anybody ever worried yourself into being a foot taller? There is arguments that anxiety and worry actually would, the opposite of lengthen. Shrink. Thank you. There's also, if you're going to say that life is about the span of time that you live, there's also a lot of out there that's the information is anxiety and worry actually shorten your life. Are you not more valuable than they? And which of you, being anxious, can add a single hour to the span of his life? And why are you anxious about clothing? Consider the lilies in the field, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin. Yet I tell you, even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of them. But if God so clothes the grass of the field, which today is alive and tomorrow is thrown into the oven, will he not much more clothe you? You have little faith. This is one of Jesus' favorite little nicknames. You little faithers. He's talking to his disciples, people he loves, people who knows who he is, and he calls them people, little tiny faithers. Therefore, do not be anxious, saying, what shall we eat? What shall we drink? What shall we wear? For the Gentiles seek after all these things, and your heavenly Father knows what you need, that you need them all. But seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. Therefore, do not be anxious about tomorrow, for tomorrow will be anxious for itself. Sufficient for this day is its own trouble. What Jesus is saying there is sufficient for this day is its own trouble. He says, don't worry about tomorrow. There'll be plenty to worry about tomorrow. That's what he's saying. It's a little bit of a joke. He's saying it like in jest. He's like, I could just see him in that moment. Everybody's like demoralized. Don't be anxious. And he's like, hey, don't even worry about tomorrow, guys. Don't worry about what's going to happen tomorrow. There'll be plenty to worry about when you get there. Don't create grief here, because when you arrive, they'll have all the grief for you. Don't worry about it. Y'all ever gone on a trip and you're going to stay at somebody's house and you say, should I bring towels? And someone's like, oh, no, we got towels. I just want you to know, tomorrow says, I got all the grief you need. You're worried about problems of tomorrow. I'll make up some new ones. No big deal. I got all the problems you need tomorrow. So just worry about what you got to today. Some of you are looking at me confused, but have you not found out that there's a fresh batch of crazy every single morning? Not the person you're waking up beside, okay? What I'm saying is, have you found out that you don't have to make up problems? This world is just cooking them up for you. Here, how about this? Anybody heard the scripture from Paul that he says, be anxious for nothing. Be anxious for nothing. You ever heard that? Which is old English kind of wording, but it means like, we should never be anxious. But how many of you actually live your life being anxious over nothing? How many of you have been absolutely bent out of shape about what could happen tomorrow, but then never does? Do you ever feel more prepared? Do you ever wake up the next day and say, I'm so glad I was miserable all day yesterday? Phew, what I thought would happen today, it happened, and I was so ready. How many of us can, by worrying, make things? Some of us in this room have convinced ourselves, well, people don't know how effective I am, and it's my worry that's made me so effective. It is also your worry that has made you not want to be around. Who, by worrying, can, and I worry all the time. I'm a worry. This is pointing at me. I'm anxious. I know people have even recently started telling me, Pastor, do you know you're a little anxious to be around? And I'm like, I don't want to hear that. But tell me, is there anything I can work on? Your anxiety. I don't want to hear that. I want to be anxious about something else I can work on. Well, could you be anxious about working on your anxiety? No. I don't want to work on that one. This is interesting. While Jesus is preaching, he basically doesn't give us commands this whole time. He keeps pointing us back to the 10 commandments. But then here, he gives us 4 commands. He gives us 4 very clear do nots. He says, do not lay up treasure on earth, because it'll never be great. Anything you lay up on this earth, it eventually will go to the moth, it'll rust, or somebody will steal it. It ain't that much. Have y'all... Those of you who are a little more gray than I got, okay? Are you more generous with your grandkids than you ever were with your kids? I'm just trying to see if it's a me problem. I'm just curious. Definitely not. Okay, all right. I look at my granny, who was extremely generous with me, but with my grandkids, she has no rules. No principles whatsoever. The woman's soul becomes a limp noodle when when her great-grandkids get around. And I'm wondering, is it because after some time in your life, do you start realizing the things that once mattered really didn't matter that much? The things that you threw a temper tantrum at your kids about, my grandmother gave me those. Your grandmother's been in the same casket for the last 50 years, and that trinket ain't no better collecting dust on the top of your table. I can't have nothing nice. Why would I buy a nice truck and put you mangy youngins in here? And then I see some people get older and then they buy junk so that they can put the mangy youngins in there with no rules. My kids love driving our old vehicles. They love it. I sat in my old van the other day and my boys all 3 at one time, can we go to McDonald's? See, I won't let them eat in our new vehicle, so let's just get crazy. They're just putting barbecue sauce in the window, painting pictures. And I got to tell you, I like driving that vehicle. There's a part of me that's like, if we were to get rear-ended right now, like, awesome. Like, I mean, we want to be safe. We want to be safe. I'm just saying, I'm not worried about that vehicle. The other one I drive worried. Do not lay up on this earth treasures, but lay your treasures in heaven. Because where your treasure is, that's where your heart is. Let me ask you, when you stand before the Lord, do you want the Lord to already know your heart's in heaven, or do you want us to be talking about what we left back here? We're standing before Jesus Christ, his scars on his hands. And we're like, yeah, but do you know how much I gave up for you? Remember when Peter said that? He said, trust me, you've not given up more than I have. Put your heart in heaven so when you get there. There was a precious lady that went to be with the Lord yesterday morning, and all I've seen in response to that is how happy she must be to be with her Savior and her the family that's there. God is making heaven sweet, and I want my heart to be there. I don't want to have to leave anything behind but this old dusty body. Here's the other things he says. He says, do not be anxious about life. He says, do not be anxious about food, drink, or clothes, and do not be anxious about tomorrow. I'm catching a theme. We hear the word anxious, we think, that, by the way, the teenagers, the current teenagers, have been labeled, which I don't know why we would do this to them, but they've been labeled the most anxious generation in the history of the world. Not just America. That would be bad enough, right? The history of the world. They're the most anxious generation in history. You would think that they would be getting rid of all that, right? Aren't we medicating them out of anxiety? Aren't there enough therapists in the world right now to therapize them out of anxiety? Don't we have enough mantras and enough opening sessions of school and enough breathing techniques? Haven't we figured out how to chill these kids out? What in the world? Why is it that anxiety is on a climb when we should be the most educated of how to get rid of it? I wonder. No, it can't be the parents. We're anxious for nothing. We didn't grow up in the most overprotected generation in history, and now we can't even let our kids play outside for 15 seconds because we know they'll be kidnapped. Or what if they were to break a limb? Oh my goodness. That might slow them down for a few minutes. We have become the most overprotected parents in the world, and we can't understand why, number one, the kids don't want to try anything, and number two, they can't handle anything. Now, not our kids. I'm talking about other kids, okay? Not the ones represented here. But why in the world would they be the most anxious? They're the most financially abundantly blessed of any generation. Why? Doesn't wealth fix anxiety? Come on. You don't know any rich people that are unhappy, do you? You don't know a rich person that's ever ended their life. You don't know a rich person whose marriage failed. You don't. All of them have an easy life. You get extra money in your bank account and everything else is perfect. Isn't that correct? Then why are we chasing the dollar and leaving our anxious kids at home playing video games, letting them be parented by the television? Not us, everybody else. Let me just tell you something. You're not going to be able to make up in their adulthood what you missed out in their childhood. But they've got to eat? Come on. When was the last time you were worried you weren't going to get a meal? Yeah, but my kids are bougie. Well, if they had more of you, they would have to only eat what you could afford. And I'm not mad. I'm anxious. I'm anxious because I want to get this right. I want all of us to get this right. I want to be the kind of person that I want to look at my kids, and when I say, man, there's something wrong with them, what's the fix? I want to either think, no, I'm the fix. I've got to fix me somehow to help them, or I know some people that can help fix, but I don't want to think we'll just get them to a doctor. I'm not against that. If you've done that, I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying, I believe there's some spiritual healing that needs to take place. And that's the book I want to go to first. I don't want to be anxious about my life, but my kids see that I'm anxious. I don't want to be anxious about my life. What is my life anyway? It's but a vapor, right? Just let it go. Loosey-goosey. I'm trying. My life's but a vapor. I'm here for a minute and I'm gone. Poof. Pow, gone. But how many days do I get anxious because I can't get my life in line the way I want to? How many of my health issues are happening and I'm just sitting there going, oh my God, I might die a day earlier than what I was going to originally because I can't get everything together. This life is a poof, man, a vapor. I got 3 boys and it's my responsibility to take with me where my heart is. And that's what I need to be focused on more than making sure that all my little levels are perfect. Now, I do need to eat salad every once in a while. I'm not taking that off the table. I do need to get that under control, but being anxious about it isn't fixing it. Here's something else about what I'll eat, drink, or what I'll wear. I'm not that worried about what I wear. I'm worried about buying the stuff I wear. Now, that makes me anxious, okay? And honestly, thankfully, in my whole life, I've never had to worry about eating. I've never missed a meal, I don't think. I have on purpose, but that's been it. I've never had to worry about that. You know, when it said here, he said, think about the birds. When I read this as a kid, I used to think that meant Jesus was saying we should never work. You know, they never toil is what he says. I'm sorry. Have you ever seen birds not toil? Have you ever seen a bird sunbathing? Now, we call it that, but them jokers are either cleaning themselves, drinking water, or finding a nut somewhere. I don't know what birds eat. Seed, whatever. But they're out there. You ever seen a squirrel take a vacation? Now, I think squirrels are a little anxious. They might have some anxiety. They might need some antidepressants or something. I don't know. But I'm going to tell you, when I read that, I used to think that meant God didn't want us to work hard. Wrong, no. It just means that we should trust him enough that when what we need, that it's going to be there for us. That when you say to yourself, man, I'm hungry, oh, there's food. And I don't have to be afraid. Because he's with me. I got to round this up at some point today. The last one that says, don't be anxious about tomorrow, there's grace for tomorrow. So here's the three areas. Number one, your treasure. Your single devotion, your single-mindedness. The reason many of you in this room, you say, I don't really know that I'm struggling with that. You know, I've got the God thing figured out in my life. I'm just going to tell you, if God is a line in your life and he's not your life, you're probably a little bit anxious. And what the old idea of anxiety was like scattered, like your mind is scattered. Anybody said I'm a scatterbrain? Like I can't get anything together. I can't get my mind together. Well, that's what literally the picture is. It's the idea of being disintegrated. And integrated is one, and disintegrated. So you ever felt like I just can't get myself together? Ever made that comment? That means you're anxious or you're worried or there's some issue there. And so what you really need in that moment is to get yourself together. And the way you do that is by single-minded focus on the one thing. You can't be focused on God and something else. Because they're not in the same direction, I promise. God is where he is, and everything else is down here. So you can't keep enough, you can't take your eyes off of God and you can't keep your eyes on God and other stuff. You've got to keep your eyes on God alone. You got to be fixed on him. You got to believe rightly. Where's your confidence? Where do you protect yourself or secure, or you're trying to keep? Where's your heart? What's the real treasure in your life? All humans treasure something. That's what it means to be human. We are the only things who are able to treasure, to value something at a different level. So what do you treasure? Well, the Bible tells us exactly how we ought to treasure. He says, love the Lord your God. But is that enough? Love the Lord your God with all of your heart, mind, soul, strength. The list goes on. We got to love him with every part of us. We don't even get to put him in the category. It's not just love him on Sunday either. How unfair is that? He can't just have one day a week. That's enough. He wants it all at all times. The first area is, where's your affections? What do you treasure? The second area is, where's your attention? He says, if you have a bad vision, bad perspective, then the whole body is going to be in trouble. Where in your life do you have mindsets that are hurting you? Do you believe? I'll tell you one of the mindsets I had to change when I started losing weight. I'm not done, but when I started losing weight, one of the mindsets I had to change was, Webb, there's a good chance you're going to eat again. I was one of the people that when we'd go to hibachi, we didn't get hibachi all the time, right? So, Webb, what would you like for dinner? I would like the steak, the chicken, and the shrimp. Because who knows? This might be my last time at hibachi. Go to Texas Roadhouse. I want the largest steak you have. And I'm not going to eat it all here. And I do. But it's because I may never get to go to Texas Roadhouse. What would happen if it shut down before I could get back here? I had the same feelings about fast food, you know? Like, I kind of want chicken and I want a burger. I'll just buy both. I'm not that hungry, but who knows? I might find out I actually wanted chicken more than the burger if I only get one. And it was that kind of living that was constantly adding calories to my body because I was always scared I would never get all that I wanted. And now I'm angry as I don't know what that it's in my kids. They're scared to death. They may miss out on something. And I'm like, you've got a very generous, beautiful life. Just soak up what you have. But often they can't even enjoy what they got right now because they're worried about missing something that might be coming. No, I'm not alone in that, am I right? All of your kids are well adjusted. All of us adults have got it figured out though, right? We don't have that feeling at all. Nobody in this room is contemplating buying a boat because you saw somebody else had a nicer one, right? Moving on. Jesus talks about the eyes a lot. He says, if your eye causes you to sin, what did he say to do with it? Gouge it out. Come on, man. He said, if it makes your body bad, you need to change your vision. And the next one, he says, if you see a speck in somebody else, but you got a plank in yours, you got a bigger issue. You got a big old log sticking out of your head, and you're like, hey, we're going to fix that in your face. Jesus knew that vision mattered a whole lot. Treasure, your affections, your attention matters a whole lot. The last thing was your anxiety. What are you worried about? The root of anxiety is unbelief. You're drawn in separate directions. You're scattered. You're supposed to go to work but not worry. If there's something coming up and you have no idea how God's going to take care of you, trust God is going to take care of you. It's what he does. It's who he is. It's who he wants to be. He will take care of you. Work hard. Save money. And trust God. Don't worry about your life, your needs, or tomorrow. God's got all you need. Anxiety shows our closeness to this earth. But confidence in God, trust in God gets rid of anxiety. Let me throw another one in here. This is not part of this message, but maybe some of you in this room, you've become so anxious that you've decided now that you're going to be apathetic. You decide, I'm not going to feel anything. I'm not going to care about anything. Well, that's not Godward either. So to cut your emotions off is not Godward either. We need to be people who put our lives in alignment with God, put our priorities right. When we get in alignment with God, we say, because you are good, because you are great, I'm not going to worry about this. My kids are sick, and I don't know what I'm going to do about it. And my life begins to get a little disintegrated because I don't know how to fix it. I don't know how to handle it. I don't know who I'm supposed to call. Isn't it a sick joke? Wouldn't you think that after you've had 2 or 3 kids, you should just be in charge of having everybody else's kids? Keeping everybody else's kids. You guys get good at it, and you stop at 2 or 3, and then another generation has to start having babies, and we don't know what we're doing. And y'all look at us like it's going to be fine. And it's like, no, it's not. This is obviously terrible. My kid is flunking Spanish. How could that be okay? And you're like, there's a lot bigger things getting ready to happen. It's going to be fine. See, if we put a lot more trust on God and take the trust off ourselves or our circumstances, we do a lot better. So anybody in this house today, you'd say, Webb, I'm struggling with anxiety. I'm sorry I'm taking so long, but I can't stop. This is huge. Jesus is so clear. Don't be anxious. Don't be anxious. There is safety in the God that we trust. So do you trust God, the provider, or your possessions? Do you trust God, your provider, or your possessions? Jesus says, seek first the kingdom and everything else will be added to you. So when you get sick, trust God. When you've been abandoned, trust God. When you lose the job, trust God. What will money do anyway? Money will give you a few weeks, but God's going to be there at the end of the few weeks. Your money's going to run out. God doesn't. Philippians 4:6 says, be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be known to God. So where is your anxiety? What are you anxious about? Just say it to yourself for a second. What are you actually anxious about? And get specific about it. Don't just say your kids. That's worthy of being concerned about. You care about your kids. But what exactly are you worried about with your kids? Is it their health? Is it their intellect? Is it their social ability? Is it the school you've got them in? What are you actually worried about? And then ask yourself, can I trust God with it? What we find out, Paul says, be anxious for nothing, but what we end up finding out is that what we are usually anxious about is nothing. So you are anxious for nothing. You spend hours worried about a thing that could take place and then it don't. And all you've done is wasted this little life that you've got. And so by worrying about tomorrow, you've actually wasted today. And today is the only day that you can do anything about tomorrow. Come on, y'all, I'm just telling you right now. The anxiety is killing you. Because the longer you sit in anxiety, the further away from getting to all the things you want to see tomorrow is coming to pass. If you spent the time working instead of worrying, or by God, worshiping instead of worrying, you might get a lot further down the road. But so many of us would rather spend our time scared to death. I don't know if it's going to work out. I don't know if it's going to work out. You want to know one of the ways to make it work out? It's like work toward it. You're anxious about your reputation. You're anxious about your finances. You're anxious about how your family's going to react. You're anxious about what you're wearing. You're anxious. God, take anxiety away from us. So I wrote this song a few years ago, and I'm going to end today by singing it. I sang it over my boys and probably more over my wife when they were young, when they were just babies, because we were having a hard time. We were anxious. We had a kid that would not sleep, and we wouldn't let him sleep. He'd scream for about 3 minutes, and we'd go pick him up and then lay him back down, and he'd scream for 3 minutes, and we'd put him back down, and he'd scream for 3 minutes, and we'd go pick him up. And so there was this little song that I wrote and started singing over him and probably over us. And I just want to share it with you today. I want you to respond today to say to the Lord, you don't need to move. If you want to move, these altars are open. If today you just feel like you need to respond, I want you just to get along with the Lord. Speak to Jesus right now. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know. Give the Lord your anxieties today.
Thank you for joining the Bethel Assembly Sermon Podcast. For more information on our ministry, visit our website at askewvilleassembly.com.